and welcome to Senior Matters. I'm Sharon Rice, and I'm the director of the Wareham Council on Aging. And in today's episode, we are talking about fuel assistance. I am really thrilled to have two representatives from the South Shore Community Action Council with me here today. I'd like to introduce Charlie Moore Ward, who is the energy manager. And we also have Denise Tetro, who is the Director of Energy Programs for South Shore Community.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, thank you for making time. I really appreciate it. You know, fuel assistance, particularly for seniors, is a really vital program. As I'm sure, you know, everybody's feeling the squeeze right now with high prices, but seniors in particular, because they have limited income, they tend to feel it more than most. So I do think that a lot of people feel fuel assistance, it's pretty easy, cut and dry, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the program. So I'm hoping today that we can educate people who probably are eligible but just don't realize it. So to start us off, could you just talk about what fuel assistance is and, in a nutshell, kind of who would be eligible for that?
Sure. Yeah. So you're right. It seems like something could be really simple, and we try to make it as easy as possible for people to apply. But the program allows people to submit their information, their application, so that we can see if they'd be eligible for any assistance from LIHEAP, our agency, and some of the things that we offer through there. So the application process usually is done like as you had been doing at the COA level. People can come in and fill out applications from there. And then we would prompt and try to find other documentation that we could get. And primarily it would be income documentation, things about their household status, you know, who lives in their home, what type of fuel source they use or what vendor they use for their heating. And from there, once they're approved for the program or deemed eligible, once the season starts, which would be November 1st, we would then be able to help them with their bills throughout the end of the fuel season, which would be April 30th.
So is it just limited to homeowners, or can renters, you know, people who live in apartments, can they apply as well?
Sure, good question. It's not just homeowners. We do also work to help out people that live in apartment situations too, and other living situations. It's sort of one of those things that as we get information from the applicant, we can really see exactly what their specific living situation is, and they all vary.
Right. One of the things I've encountered is that the lack of housing or the tough housing market, we're seeing a lot of non-traditional households. So you might see senior siblings living together, or seniors with roommates, or you have seniors who live with maybe a child and their own children. How does that work? Do they all the adults get to apply, or is it just one per household?
Sure. So in an apartment situation where a person may have roommates, we would request that everybody that lives within that household does submit their income information and are on the application that's being submitted. We would take that all into account. There are situations where, you know, maybe they're not all looking to be on the program or don't need the assistance. It might just be that one person. So that would be a separate economic situation for that one person. But yeah, we would want to dive into that a little bit more, and that's why the application process is so important, because we find out a lot through either phone calls or some documents that might be sent in to us, and we can investigate a little bit more and make sure that we're helping the person the best that we can and understand their living situation. Because as you mentioned, there are a lot of variety to people's living situations, especially right now.
Right.
But the first step would be they would have to apply as one household.
One household.
So if in fact they were separate, they would do that first, and then our agency would reach out to them as to all the different ways they could document that they weren't one household.
Okay. All right. That's good. Very good information to have. Now, some folks, renters, their heat is included in their rent. They don't actually pay a heat provider. So what happens for those folks? Are they still eligible? Can they apply for fuel assistance?
We encourage everybody who, you know, could potentially be eligible for the program to apply. And again, it's one of those things where we would go through and review and see what, you know, the specifics are about their current living situation. But certainly, if they are somebody that has their heat included in their rent, that doesn't preclude them. They still could be potentially eligible. It would just be surrounding factors to their situation that would deem what their benefit level might be if they are approved for the program.
Right.
So, and if they were approved for the program, the way that they would receive assistance is we would provide them with 30% of their rent up to their benefit level directly to them.
Directly to them,
Yes.
as opposed to traditionally, if a homeowner or the renter if they're paying their own utilities, you pay the utility provider, correct?
Correct.
You don't pay so it's really important that they put the right account number on the form, so that way the credit gets put on the right account.
Yes. So you bring up a really, really good point. One thing that I spend a lot of time on during the season, and just after when we're trying to wrap up the payments to the utilities, is making sure we have correct numbers. We don't always get an updated account number sent to us if somebody either for whatever reason changed their service or whatever it happens to be. So getting those fresh, current bills submitted with the application is so important, because if we don't have the right numbers, there's no way for that to match up when we're making payments to, let's say, one of the utility companies or an oil vendor, whatever it happens to be. So I would say one of the biggest things I try to promote is always submit an updated bill. And even if during the course of the season, something with your account number had changed,
Right.
or the name on the bill switched maybe to a husband over the wife, or whatever it happens to be, let us know and submit that new bill when it comes into us so we can update. Otherwise, we can't make payments.
Right, absolutely.
But it's not only their primary heat source. The last 2 years, the state has allowed us to pay secondary heat sources, which would be the electric. And without an electric account, we can't make that payment. So not only their heating bill, but their electric bill, if that's sent in, that really speeds things up and allows them for a payment if they have funds available at the end of the program.
Okay, so that's really good to know. So, and the documentation that's submitted with the application has those account numbers, right? So, because we do have folks that are mobility challenged, maybe they have arthritis, or their vision might not be so good, and they might put things in the wrong line. So there is someone on your end that checks these things, hopefully.
So when they come in, if we have a new bill or a current bill that's submitted, it's definitely double checked against what we have in their account. If they're had been part of the program previously, but again, numbers do change. So
Right.
send the bill in, and as Denise mentioned, for whatever your secondary is, if it's electric primarily, that would be what we'd want that too, because as she mentioned, at the end of the program, if there is funds left, we can make payments. So you could potentially be missing out on a little bit more help if we don't have that information.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. So this is a kind of left field question, but does it make a difference what the source is for the heating supply? So obviously you would pay a gas company, or you would pay presumably an oil distributor. Does it matter? They could have electric heat, propane.
Sure.
We have a lot of folks that live in mobile homes here that use propane. Does any of that preclude?
So beyond those, what you've mentioned, we also have people that have wood as
That's where
their
I
fuel
was going with
source.
this. You
Pellet
right.
stoves?
Yeah,
pellet stoves,
pellets,
for sure.
yes.
I think we still have somebody with kerosene.
Okay.
Yeah, we have quite a few carrots.
So
Yeah.
so we are sort of all encompassing.
Okay, so that's great, because I do have a senior here who heats with wood, and
Oh, sure.
I wondered how that all works. So that's really good to know that
Yeah.
she can.
And it would be very similar to somebody who, let's say, has oil, and they, if whatever it happens to be, we would get the ticket.
Right.
It would be the same thing for the person who gets wood or pellets. We'd want to see the purchase ticket and make sure that their name was on there, and that we could definitely connect it to their home.
Get it. So I've got my dad in mind for this now. So my dad's 87, and thankfully he won't ever see this. But he's the kind of guy who he gets the bill, he pays it the next day. So if someone has applied for fuel assistance, but you haven't responded yet, it's pretty new, and they get a bill, should they pay it or hang on to it?
So I would never discourage anybody from making a payment to one of their bills. If, let's say, they had submitted their application after the program had started, or we're still working apps that had been submitted earlier before the program. You don't want to get yourself into a bigger pickle by not paying on what your bills are saying you owe. But that being said, we can pay back onto your account as long as what was billed was between November 1st and April 30th.
Okay, and so will the same be true for oil deliveries? Because that's something that obviously if you run out of oil, you can't really wait until an application is approved or not. You just need to get it filled.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, emergencies we can't necessarily take until the season opens, which again would be that November 1st date, but certainly you're able to call in, and as long as you definitely make sure you're letting it be known to whomever you speak to that it's an emergency so that it can be handled properly.
And I think you've kind of answered this question indirectly, but if someone is in arrears on their heating bill, you don't go backwards. Right, you can't help with the balance that they bring into the fuel assistance period, or can you?
Well, we typically wouldn't pay for anything that was outside of the fuel season, but there could be a case maybe if somebody got a shut-off notice because of that arrears balance or whatever it happens to be. There are certain situations that we can handle and potentially help with.
The arrearages that we usually pay on, that we're allowed to pay on, natural gas and electricity, and we can only pay a portion of it, and it has to keep them on. If the portion that we pay is not going to keep them on, we can't pay it.
Right. Okay. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So with when someone applies, what is it that you have a formula, obviously, that you factor in, income, and what other things do you consider? Do you look at like water sewer bills? Do you look at real estate taxes? What else works into that?
Yeah, so it would be a number of things go into that calculation, and we don't personally make the determination, but some of the things that go into it would be household size. Of course, income, it's very much income-based and driven, but the household size, the heating source can affect the benefit level. Oil tends to be pretty expensive, so it would be adjusted to make sure that people, if they're getting the benefit, it's distributed in a way that's even, not necessarily by the exact amount, but by the benefit that it's helping, proportionally.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But as far as eligibility-wise, it's not an asset program. It's solely gross income of the household.
I see. Okay. So normally, the Council on Aging here in Wareham would help people fill out these applications. Right now, we're in a transition stage where we have a staff member leaving, and we don't have. We're in the process of hiring someone, but that hasn't happened yet. So folks can call the South Shore Community Action Council directly. And do they apply over the phone? How does that work if they reach out to you directly?
So a few different scenarios. Certainly they can make the phone call. That definitely is probably easiest for many people. But we take walk-ins. So that's how our agency works. We have walk-ins throughout the day. And you don't necessarily need to call and schedule a time to come in. Although if we needed to make an accommodation, we could certainly go that route. So somebody would know that X person is coming in on this day to do that. But the walk-in tends to be really helpful for people because they don't then have to have a very specific time to get there, which is definitely helpful for people who work and may only have a certain amount of time or whatever it happens to be. And so that is helpful as opposed to definitely setting like a specific appointment time, unless it's really, really needed. In that case, again, we would just want them to discuss it with somebody so that they could have a heads up that they'll be there on Friday at 2 p.m., something like that.
Okay. So if they were to call, so you're located, first of all, on, is it Obery Street in?
71 Obery Street in Plymouth.
Okay.
It's right near BI Plymouth.
Okay. And you're open 8:30 to 4 every day, Monday to Friday?
Yep, the agency is open 8:30 to 4 p.m.
Okay, so you would take walk-ins at any point during there.
Well, actually, we're open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for applications. We try on Wednesday to get paperwork done, but if someone were to walk in, we would never turn them away.
Okay, good to know. So, but if someone were to call, if a senior were to call, I mean, some of them just Plymouth, it's not that far, but it might be a problem, especially if they don't have transportation or whatever. Sure. So they can speak with a representative over the phone. What happens? They give them some information. They answer questions about income and whatever else you may ask. And then can they literally just verbally fill out the application with a representative and then provide the documentation by mail or fax or?
Somebody would be able to take their information for sure. Obviously, as you know, we definitely need the original application with their signature. On the back side, too, if they do have other household members over 18, those signatures we also need. If we don't have those in certain cases, we would then send out what we call like an addendum form, which would have space for them to fill out and get signatures from all the folks in their household. But if it's just them, it would just be a matter of that original application being signed.
Okay,
that
so
we
you
would
could
need
do that
from
by
them.
mail then?
Absolutely.
Yeah, make it easy for them. Okay.
We get a lot, our mail bins are full every morning when we
I'm
start
sure they
the
are.
day. Yeah.
And we do have a portal that they can do online interview type things, almost the same as the phone. They would fill out information to the best of their ability. Somebody from our agency would then call and do that, fill the information in, send the application to them, and whatever they might need, if they didn't attach it, to send it back. So that's another option for them to apply.
That's great.
And the nice thing about the portal too is that if people are comfortable and savvy with uploading documents and working it that way, it kind of does help them along in the long run, because those documents will already be there. We're not necessarily waiting for them to come in or checking the mail for that type of thing. So the portal is great for people who are interested in looking at it and trying to use it for that.
Absolutely. So you had mentioned earlier that the fuel assistance starts November 1st,
Yes.
and it runs through the end of April, right?
That's correct.
So if someone were to apply later in the period, so they've been presumably paying their bill, and I'm going to assume, like the rest of the world, that South Shore Community Action Council is probably not fully staffed. There's just a very small pool to choose from.
Sure.
So it's going to probably take some time. 6 weeks for a completed application, is that?
Yeah, I would say, it really depends on every applicant's situation. If we're getting back, let's say there's something missing from the application and we're getting it back in a timely manner, that will help them. That will be to their benefit. But yeah, so it's just a matter of if we get everything that we need. So if we don't have everything, people can sometimes feel like we're asking for too much or keep sending them requests for different documentation. But so your timeline, I can't really say a specific timeline.
I know, I was putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's so variable. But I would say if people have access to the website to see what types of things we offer, or if they do stop by a COA somewhere that's near them, not necessarily Wareham, but you can take a look at the checklist and see what you need. So if you have your documents pulled together and they're going to allow you to do a check off on something from the list, that is really helpful in keeping the process moving for their application. So there's not as much back and forth or letters or them receiving letters that we need X, Y, Z.
Right.
But anybody that is approved any time of the program year, we do go back to November 1st to assist them.
That's where I was going.
So if they heat with electric or they heat with gas or even a delivered fuel that they haven't paid, we will go back and pay that. I did want to say, if I have a minute, I don't know how we're doing time-wise, but last year we assisted 986 households in Wareham, and to the tune of $1,236,170. And the state is spending time now to rebrand the program, because for years and years it's been a low-income program. It's not low income. So people are dissuaded by that terminology. A family of two can make up to $59,359 gross income and still be eligible for the program. So we are spending time to try to let people understand that it's not low income. It's moderate income. You may be eligible. Don't ever think you're not. Apply and let us make that determination.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. We are running short on time, but I did want to just touch base on one other thing. I know that you have, or part of this program will help residents if they have, say, a furnace that needs repair, maybe a hot water heater. I'm not sure what fits into that. How does that work? Is that something that you apply for at the same time that you apply for your your assistance, or can you do that at a separate time? Or?
Sure, you can do that at a separate time. For Wareham, for example, HAC, Housing Assistance Corporation on Cape Cod, they would handle Wareham for replacements or repairs. But what it does ride on, though, is that the client has actually applied and been deemed eligible for the program for them to be able to do their work and assist in that way.
So the initial program, the fuel assistance program, they need to be able to be eligible for
Yes.
that and approved, and then they can apply for this additional help.
And South Shore, we do provide those services, but Wareham and then the Cape and Islands is handled by HAC. Yep.
But it's a one application, so
I
they
see.
don't have to fill out another application. If they're eligible for home heating assistance, then they're eligible potentially for those programs as long as funds are available. All they need to do is make a call.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both so much. This was very educational for me, and I'm sure for our viewers. For those at home that might want to reach out to South Shore Community Action Council, the phone number is 508-746-6707. If you need any copies made or any information faxed over to the South Shore Community Action Council, we can help you with that over at the COA, so don't hesitate to come see us. And thank you both for making time for us, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.